What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my Week 7 NCAA football power rankings. Let's get into it here. Dropping from my rankings, Arizona and UNLV both lost this week after some big wins the previous week. Just couldn't put it all together this week, and that's why they're falling out. And then in the others receiving votes, I think this is probably one of my toughest rankings that I've had to do for the top 25 at least, and especially that 25 to 21 because Army Navy obviously both undefeated. SMU, big win last week, and they only have a loss. Nebraska, one loss. Colorado, even one loss. But the 25 through 21, I think I have to keep USC in there one more week, even after a loss at Minnesota. This Minnesota team could easily be undefeated. That loss that they lost to Michigan, onside kick goes their way. That flag doesn't get called. They could have won that game. But USC just didn't show up, and they haven't showed up now in back-to-back weeks. Playing Michigan, lost to them. And USC's defense is still playing really well. It's just now the offense is struggling. If they lose this week, obviously they're going to fall out of the rankings. But if they get a big win against Penn State at home, they're going right back up in the rankings and still have a shot in the Big Ten and for a college football playoff berth. Some other Big Ten teams, we got Illinois at 24. They idle because of their bye week. They get Purdue. And then Michigan, like I said, they beat USC, so obviously they're going to be in front of USC. But a tough loss on the road at Washington, and quarterback concerns are still there. Orji gets benched, and you get the seventh year super senior Jack Tuttle comes in, plays okay, costs them a potential chance of winning this game with a fumble late in the game, and Washington walks away with it. They get a bye to really assess the quarterback room, and that's the only thing that Michigan can really do. It's 27 points to Washington on the road, prime time. I think it's okay for that defense. Probably not as good as they want, but it's not the same defense as last year. Pittsburgh at 22, big win on the road at UNC. 5-0. Good game probably this week against California at home. Cal has to travel all the way across the country for this one, though. But Cal, man, they almost beat Miami last week. We'll get into that later. But Cal definitely could give Pittsburgh some fits this week. And then K-State stays idle. They get a big game at Colorado. Big game for both those teams, both with one loss. And it's a Big 12 complicated game as well because, I like to say complicated because the Big 12 it's just going to be going back and forth every single week. 20 through 16, Missouri falls out of the top 10 after their ugly, ugly loss on the road at Texas A&M. It looked like it was coming after Vanderbilt game. Obviously, Vanderbilt with the big win this week. They get UMass on the road. It should be an easy rebound game for Missouri, but I don't like what I'm seeing out of those Tigers in these recent weeks. I do like what I'm seeing out of Boise State. This team put up 62 at home against Utah State, beat them by 32, going on the road to Hawaii. Genty going for the Heisman. I honestly, right now, I'd probably give it to him the way he's carrying this team. And well, Boise State, their only loss there to Oregon on the road by 3 points. So this Boise State team, yeah, they didn't earn my respect a little bit earlier, but now they're starting to earn it. As long as Genty's healthy, this team is probably going to go 11-1, maybe 10-2, and win the MAC and win the Mountain West. And if that's the case, then this team might be your 12th seed in the college football playoff. Indiana, they're a team that's shocking people 6-0 right now as they head into their bye week after they beat Northwestern on the road. And only good things to say their immediate quick fix there in Bloomington. And hopefully they can keep it going after the bye week. Oklahoma, Utah both move up because some teams falling. Utah gets rewarded with an easier game on the road at Arizona State, while Oklahoma, Red River Showdown this weekend. Great weekend of football. Oklahoma, Texas going to be a great game, but if Oklahoma wants to prove that they are a college football playoff worthy team, you got to win this game. 15 through 11. And I'm finally putting the Aggies back in. I was kind of on the fence with them. I get that they lost to Notre Dame early on, but now they're 5-0 since 3-0 in SEC play. And that dominant win against Missouri at home obviously earns them my respect in a top 15 ranking as well. They go into the bye week, I think, very happy with where they're at. And that could be an SEC, I don't want to say sleeper team, but an SEC team that could be on the rise and on the lookout when it's all said and done and it shakes out. They could be playing in the SEC championship game. You got two Big 12 teams here at 13 and 14. BYU moves up because of some teams falling and they get Arizona. What Arizona team are we going to get? That's the big question mark there. If they get the one that's been losing, BYU should take care of them. If they get the one that pulled off the upset, then that could be a 3-point game and get decided at the end. Iowa State going into West Virginia, tough game to play. West Virginia plays every team very well. They just unfortunately can't win the games at the end. They did beat Baylor in a close game at half, but then really took care of them in the second half. And I think Iowa State could move to 6-0 and possibly be a top 10 team next week. At 12, you get Notre Dame, and they move up because obviously teams fell. They get Stanford at home. I really see the Riley Leonard show taking over yet again, and Jeremiah Love as well. As long as those two are healthy and playing well, I think Notre Dame's going to win. Then LSU, they get Ole Miss this week. A big game for both of those teams, both with one loss this year. And LSU still undefeated in SEC play. So obviously, if they can get Ole Miss at home, we saw what it was. I believe it was last year. I think it was last year, that huge game. I think it was like 55, 52, something like that. So hopefully we can get another game like that where it is just back and forth. 6 through 10. We'll start with the ACC teams in Clemson at 10 and Miami at 7. Clemson jumps into the top 10 for the first time since the preseason, and that's because, that Georgia game just not a good showing, but they found ways to win four straight, and they beat Florida State on the road. Wasn't a blowout, but hey, it's still a tough road win. And now they go on the road to Wake Forest. I expect them, Cade Klubnik and company, to take care of business. Ole Miss, like I said, at LSU, and you see the 10, even though they were 11. I'm going off AP rankings here. It's a big game for both those schools. Obviously, Ole Miss, that'll be their seventh game played already, and that's pretty wild. I think they have a bye after this LSU game, much needed one, as of course. But Ole Miss took care of business at South Carolina. I thought that was going to be a closer game than it was. I think it was only a 7 point line there, and Ole Miss definitely covered that. It was kind of surprising at how well they played, if I'm going to be honest, but they're more than deserving to move up. Moving down is Tennessee. Tennessee, man, where do I start? I thought this team was going to be the SEC powerhouse to rival Bama, and they lost on the road at Arkansas. Now they do have a good pick-me-up bounce back game at Florida or against Florida at home. I expect them to win that, and this offense has to figure it out because Nico Iamaleava, he has struggled the last 2 weeks. Yeah, they won against Oklahoma, but this game at Arkansas, he just did not show up. Dylan Sampson played well, but this offense really just needs to figure it out as they get into the bulk of SEC play. Miami, it should say win at California. It was a very, very concerning win. I think it was 38-37. Good win there for the Hurricanes. They go into a bye, and at this point in the season, you'd rather lose early than late. So a Miami loss at this point isn't going to look too good for them unless it's against the big team. And that game at California really, I think, is going to solidify Miami being a top 10 team for the rest of the year for me. Because most of those teams, like Tennessee, Missouri, those teams lost those games where Miami fought their way back into it and won. So I am really high on the Hurricanes at this point in the season. A team I'm not high on is Penn State. I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State gets upset this week. I'm not saying they're gonna, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happens because just history. Look at James Franklin, 10-2. As long as Ohio State and Michigan aren't on the schedule, Penn State could go undefeated. But there always seems to be a different team that upsets Penn State when both those aren't on the schedule. And don't be surprised if USC is that team. Now, 5 through 1, lots of shakeup here. Obviously, Texas jumps back to 1 with Bama falling. Ohio State moves up. Oregon, I'm putting them up here in the top 3 now. They played some good football as they're undefeated. And then Bama drops to 4 with their loss at Vanderbilt, and Georgia stays idle at 5 with their win at Auburn. And I'll talk about the 3 SEC teams. Georgia at 5, obviously a good bounce back win after their loss to Bama. Should blow out Mississippi State at home, and that offense in Carson Beck is looking really good now, and I expect them to kind of run the table and coast. They have to have a bounce back game here. The offense played really well, but this Vanderbilt team just showed no giving up the whole game, and it's tough to overcome that. I think it's Vandy's first win against AP #1 in I think 50 something years. And man, it's a great, great weekend for Vanderbilt. And they're going to be talking about that win probably for the rest of their lives. But Alabama really needs to bounce back here this weekend. South Carolina, they should. It is a home game, so that obviously helps them. And obviously Texas at #1 had a bye last week. They get the Red River Showdown this week, and they win that game. They're definitely solidified #1 for the time being. But you want to talk about 2 and 3? Yeah, they're wrong in my power rankings. I have Ohio State over Oregon. AP poll has Oregon over Ohio State. Doesn't matter. I think Ohio State deserves to be up here because what they did against Iowa in the first half, throw that out the window. This team is always the second half team, and 28 points in the second half against that Iowa defense. Yeah, this Ohio State team is going to be good. Now, Oregon, on the other hand, kind of struggled early on. Red zone turnovers. Gabriel didn't play his best, but they still found a way to win this game 31-10 against Michigan State. And they do get the advantage of Ohio State coming to their place. And that's going to be a big, big game atmosphere. Obviously, Big Ten. So huge implications on that game. And let's say Oregon wins, they still have Michigan on the road. It's a tough game for them. Ohio State obviously still has Michigan at home. So these teams do have some big games left in the season, but whoever wins this game definitely is going to have the advantage on the other team, maybe for the Big Ten championship and even for college football playoff seeding. That's going to be it for my week 7 power rankings. Check back next week after a big week of college football to see where all these teams stack up. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.